Hey gang, and welcome back. Just a reminder, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com. You'll get 10% off orders over $10 and help with the channel at the same time. Are you ready for another EDH gameplay video? Because we've got one just for you. This week I am playing Kevin's Gonti deck, and I keep a hand with 4 Swamps, Massacre Worm, Karn Liberated, and Caged Sun. Max is playing his Neheb deck and keeps hand with 2 Mountains, Inspiring Statuary, Satyr Fire Dancer, Darksteel Plate, Commune with Lava, and Gamble. Kevin is playing my Zedruu deck again and keeps a hand with Plains, Island, Treachery, Enlightened Tutor, Idyllic Tutor, Ghostly Prison, and Curse of Opulence. Lastly, Mark, who's new to the channel, is playing Evil Adam's Rakdos deck and keeps a hand with Vampiric Tutor, Coalition Relic, Scalding Tarn, Mountain, Swamp, Rakdos Signet, and Lotus Petal. I win the die roll and start us off. I play a Swamp and pass to Mark. Mark plays a Command Tower and passes turn. Kevin plays a Plains and also passes. Max plays a Mountain and casts Gamble on turn 1, a bold move. He goes to find his card, and Mark casts Vampiric Tutor to find a card. Kevin also wants to tutor and drops Enlightened Tutor. Kevin's the only one who needs to reveal, and he puts a Sol Ring on top of his library. I get to pick the random card for Max, and I hit Inspiring Statuary before he passes back to me. With all the action happening last turn, my playing a Swamp and passing to Mark might seem a bit boring. Mark plays a Mountain and casts a Lobber Crew, which we realize costs 3. Thankfully, Mark has Lotus Petal in his hand and remedies the cost difference before passing. Kevin draws his Sol Ring and plays an Island before casting the Sol Ring. He then uses his remaining mana to cast Ghostly Prison and passes turn. Max plays a Mountain and casts Mana Crypt for his turn. He then casts a Blood Moon to mess with everyone's mana base. For my turn, I simply play a Swamp and pass. Mark also plays a Swamp for his turn and pays 3 to cast Coalition Relic before passing turn. Kevin draws, but is out of lands to play, so he doubles up on his defenses by casting Propaganda before passing to Max. Max plays a Command Beacon before remembering he had to roll for Mana Crypt. He gets hit for 3 by the Crypt this time around, and in his main phase, he casts Neheb before passing turn. For my turn, I play a Swamp and cast Gonti, targeting Mark with the Enter the Battlefield trigger. I pick a card, clearly not happy with my choice, and pass to Mark. At the end of my turn, Mark taps the Lobber Crew to deal 1 to all of his opponents, and he taps the Relic to put a counter on it. Mark plays a Scalding Tarn for his turn before tapping the Lobber Crew to deal 1 to all of his opponents. He chooses to gain 1 black from the Relic in his pre-combat main phase, and pays 4 to cast his Commander. The Lobber Crew untaps as a result of a multicolored spell being played, and Mark has to only pay 1 red to cast a Thermal Alchemist before he passes turn. Kevin draws for turn and plays a Mountain that comes into play tapped and looks a startling amount like a Boseiju who shelters all. Kevin then casts an Idyllic Tutor to find Keranos and puts it into his hand. Max once again fails his roll for the Mana Crypt and takes 3. Max then casts a Pyromancer's Goggles, but can't actually attack anyone easily, so he decides to pass. I play a Swamp for my turn and pay 1 to cast the Mana Vault I stole from Mark with Gonti. I then drop a Caged Sun, naming black, before passing to Mark. At the end of my turn, Mark once again taps the Lobber Crew to deal 1 to his opponents and puts a counter on his Relic. Mark uses the mana from his Relic in his main phase to help cast a Rakdos Signet. He then casts a Leyline of the Void to disrupt anyone who planned to abuse their graveyards, and passes to Kevin. Kevin draws for turn, but with still no lands to play, casts Keranos to bump up his enchantment count. With nothing else, he passes turn. Max finally dodges the bullet with his Mana Crypt roll, but still can't seem to draw a land either. He casts a Darksteel Plate, and with the spell resolving, moves to equip it onto his commander. Moving to combat, Max swings Neheb at me, and I jump with Gonti, forgetting that Neheb has a Flick 3. I lose 3 life, and in Max's post-combat main phase, he gains 3 red mana, which he uses in addition to the Goggles to cast the Goggles' owner, Chandra, Torch of Defiance. Max then upticks Chandra using her second ability, and uses the 2 red mana to cast a Satyr Fire Dancer, doing a little dance himself. I take 1 on my upkeep as I do not untap my Mana Vault, and play a Swamp in my main phase. I then tap 4 Swamps as my lands tap for 2 to cast Karn Liberated. I downtick Karn to exile Max's Neheb, and then drop an Erebos. At the end of my turn, Mark taps his Lobber Crew and Alchemist to deal 2 to all of his opponents, but redirects the damage to my Karn. Mark draws for turn, and picks red for mana from his Relic. He then uses it to pay for the Rakdos Signet's cost, and uses that mana for the Signet to cast a Fire Diamond. With no cards in hand, Mark can't cheat out any huge creatures, so he decides to swing Rakdos at Max's Chandra to take her out of commission, before passing to Kevin. Kevin draws for turn, and reveals a Dovescape with the Keranos trigger. He targets Mark's Thermal Alchemist with a 3 damage, and Mark in turn taps the Alchemist to deal 1 to each of his opponents before it dies. Mark does choose to have my Karn take the 1, killing it however. Kevin then casts Curse of Opulence, putting on me and passing turn. Max plays a mountain for his turn and casts Commune with Lava where X is 2. He exiles Soulscar Mage and Flame Rift, and taps his goggles to help cast the Flame Rift to deal 8 damage to everyone. Max then uses the Satyr Fire Dancer triggers to deal 8 damage to Rakdos. Moving to combat, Max swings the Satyr Fire Dancer at me, and both Max and Kevin get a gold token. I then take 1 damage, and in Max's second main phase, he uses the gold token and casts the Soulscar Mage before passing turn. On my upkeep, I pay for Mana Vault's untap trigger and draw for turn. I play a Swamp before casting a Panharmonicon, and I then use my remaining mana to cast Gonti, getting 2 Enter the Battlefield triggers. I use 1 trigger on Kevin and the other one on Mark. I then cast the Mana Crypt I stole from Mark and pass turn. Mark puts a counter on his relic once more and deals 1 to all of his opponents. Mark draws for turn, but has nothing to do and has to pass. Kevin draws for turn, and his Keranos trigger reveals a Steam Vents, allowing him to draw another card. Kevin then has the mana to cast Supreme Verdict, in part thanks to his gold token, to wipe the board. Mark taps his Lobber Crew to deal 1 to everyone before it dies though. Kevin then plays his Steam Vents and lets it come into play tapped before passing turn. Max avoids taking damage from his Mana Crypt once more and casts a Primal Amulet in his first main phase. With nothing else to cast, Max passes turn. I also avoid the damage from my Crypt on my turn and cast a Crypt cast in my main phase. Macabre then joins the team before I naturally follow up by casting Attrition. Moving to combat, I swing Erebos at Mark for 7. Mark unfortunately doesn't do very much and plays a Swamp before passing turn. Kevin reveals a Copy Enchantment off the top and deals 3 to my Crypt cast. Normally it would come back thanks to Macabre, but with Mark's Leyline, it exiles my Poor Spirit instead. Kevin then casts the Copy Enchantment as another Ghostly Prison and passes turn. Max takes no damage from his Mana Crypt this turn and drops a mountain before recasting Neheb. I sadly don't look as good as Trevor does while he's rolling dice, and as a result, I fail my Mana Crypt trigger, taking 3. I then cast Fleshbag Marauder, forcing Max to sacrifice Neheb, and I'm my Marauder who gets exiled. Moving to combat, I swing my Erebos at Kevin, paying 6 mana to deal 7 damage, and Macabre at Mark for a further 6 damage. Mark draws for a turn, but with no way to deal damage to his opponent, he can't cast Rakdos, so he simply plays a Swamp and passes turn. Kevin reveals a Sacred Foundry off the top with Keranos and draws again. He then plays the Foundry and pays 4 to cast Stranglehold before passing turn. Max loses his Mana Crypt roll and takes 3 from the Crypt. He then plays a Rogue's Passage in his first main phase. Max then taps out once more to recast Neheb before passing turn. I don't get hurt by my Crypt, and in my first main phase I bring back Gonti once more. I put one of the Enter the Battlefield triggers on Max, and the other on Mark. Moving to combat, I swing Erebos and Macabre at Mark for 13. During my second main phase, I cast the Helm of Obedience I stole with the Gonti trigger from Kevin. At the end of my turn, Mark puts a counter on his relic. Mark casts what I can only imagine to be the saddest Rise from the Dark Realms to get back his 2 creatures, as all the other creatures have long been since exiled. As he's desperate to get some creatures back that can deal damage, this is all Mark can do before passing to Kevin. Kevin reveals a Solitary Confinement off the top with Keranos and deals 3 damage to me. Moving to Kevin's main phase, he casts the Solitary Confinement, and with the spell in the stack, knowing how difficult Zedruu can be when the confinement is out, I activate the Helm of Obedience to exile Kevin's library thanks to Mark's Leyline of the Void. Sadly, this means I lose the Helm, and we move to Max's turn. Max takes 3 from his Mana Crypt once more, and plays a Shivan Gorge for his turn. He then pays to equip Neheb with the Darksteel Plate, and I sacrifice Erebos to Attrition while the equip trigger is on the stack. Sadly, Erebos is exiled, but I think that's a fair trade-off. Max is out for revenge at this point, and he casts Star of Extinction using mana from the goggles and puts a second copy of the spell in the stack. All of the creatures in play take 40 damage, and he destroys 2 of my swamps. Max also gets to put a counter on his amulet as a result before passing turn. For my turn, I avoid any damage from the Mana Crypt, and I draw for my turn. I then tap out to cast Profane Command, where X is 13, and deal 13 damage to Max, and give up to 13 of my creatures I control Fear. Mark puts a counter on the relic at the end of my turn, and begins his own turn. Mark draws for turn and casts a Crypt cast. He then casts a Charcoal Diamond and extorts it, draining me for 1 before passing turn. Mana Crypt ain't got nothing on me, and I cast Massacre Worm in my main phase to kill Mark's Crypt cast. Mark takes 2 from the gas dying, and I can finally cast Beseech the Queen to go and find a Soul Ring, which I cast before passing turn. Mark casts Demonic Tutor during his first main phase to hopefully find an answer. He grabs and casts Runescarred Demon, and casts it while sacrificing a Scalding Tarn at the same time. He grabs a Snow-Covered Mountain, and Mark realizes while he's tutoring that he should have grabbed something other than the demon. He picks his card and unfortunately has to pass. I get hit by the crypt during my upkeep, and I recast Gonti in my first main phase, putting both triggers on Mark, my only legal target. I use the Chaos Warp that I stole with Gonti to shuffle away the Runescar Demon, and Mark shuffles it away before revealing Sulphur Springs off the top. This means he dies when I swing at the worm, and I win the game. Game review time. So, I think this game was interesting to watch, mostly because it showed how quickly Rakdos is able to sort of falter if he doesn't have a reliable draw engine. I'm not too sure what Mark tutored for early on, but I think the fact that he lost both of his pingers and had no reliable way not only to recast Rakdos, but to cheat things out from his hand, really kinda neutered the deck. Kevin was severely land-starved this game, and he pretty much gave me the object of his own demise with the Helm of Obedience. It did work in my favor that Mark cast Leyline of the Void, but Kevin really seemed to be struggling this game, and even with Keranos giving him extra draws or damage, he didn't seem to get very far. As a result, this meant that Max was the only one who I had to really worry about, and after the misplay with Neheb dealing afflict damage to me, I wasn't going to make that same mistake twice. Max suffered heavily due to the fact that his deck was so heavily focused around his commander, which isn't a bad thing, but it is a unique happenstance when it comes to playing an EDH deck that isn't based around good stuff or combos in those colors. There's nothing wrong with it, but it can lead to things being very difficult to achieve when your commander costs upwards of 11. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/mtgmudsta, and lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/mtgmudsta. This video is brought to you in part by support from my Patreons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit my Patreon link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.